Okay, welcome everybody. Week 2 of the improvisation for Exactly Like You. Make sure you download the tab. It's on week 1 of this month up at the top. Make sure you click on watch on YouTube inside the window so you can be part of the chat, and make sure you say hello. And let me know if there's any trouble with the sound. It's looking good on this side. But of course, I'm not the one listening. So we're going to do a couple things today, starting with... so here's where we left off last week. Let's start with that. So we ended last week looking at a model solo that was basically just learning one variation on the A section and playing that for all 3 A's, and then playing the melody for the B section, right? So that's what we have here. That's our point of departure. So that just to get used to playing something besides the melody. And then we're into the embellished B section, but you could play the fundamental version of that instead. Back to the A. So that's our model, and what we're going to do this week is actually start off with something that's a little bit of a side note, which is that there's a really nice place to do a little stop time break at the end of the A section, the first time when you're going around to the second A, and at the end of the tune, so that's the third A, when you're coming back around to the beginning of the song. And you can hit a G chord and then play some kind of lick that is leading you back into the C chord. So what it looks like if I played the A section from the model solo and then put in a lick at the last minute, I'd be filling in this spot here, which is just G chord right now, with a lick. So that would sound like this. And of course, it's variable. So I've isolated this one move and put it up here. This is example A. So we're playing a G in the bass, but we're basically playing C licks. There's your C. So that's one possibility, but here are 3 more. We could do this. That starts off a bit more of a G sound. That's all kind of G stuff. 5, 4, flat 3, 3 of the G. And then 5, 6, and root of C. And then the next one goes a little out of position. Well, let's see, does it? Yeah. That's all C stuff. 5, 6, flat 3, 3, root 6, 5. And then finally, this option. So, flat 3 to 2 to 1 on the C. So, if we dropped in, say, this example down here, we'd be coming from here. So it just gives you 4 different ways that you can kind of fill in that spot with some different moves. which means, of course, every time around you could do something a little different, or you could come up with some licks of your own, whatever you want to do. But I just wanted to sort of include that as something to think about as you get into the soloing. So what we're going to do is take the rhythmic contour of the melody, which we looked at last week, and we're going to try some different licks. And we're going to break it up because we got 8 bars to work with here on the A section. We're going to break it up into 4-bar sections. So we'll look at 4 different ways to play through bars 1 through 4, right? So basically going from the C to the D. And then in just a minute, we'll look at how to play over the G back to the C, measures 5 through 8. But let's start here. So here is the first 4 bars of the model solo, just to see what that looks like. Now, there's a name for this, and you don't need to know it, but if you like to have like some taxonomy for what you're doing, this is basically the idea of playing a sequence. You play something, and then you basically play something as close to it as you can when the chord changes. Now, there are a couple things that happen to make the first version work when you get to the D chord. The first thing is that we take a note out. It's 1 note shorter. We don't play this low G here. And then the other thing is that it's called a common tone sequence because we're trying to keep as many of the notes the same as possible. So we're doing, and then we're playing pretty much the exact same thing over the D chord. And we're going to see some other examples of that as we go down the page. So the next thing we have is example 2. We have, so still following the rhythmic contour of I know why I waited, right? So we're just playing variations on the melody. This is example 2 again, the first 2 bars. Now, here's an example of repeating the same idea, but we're going to change some notes to fit the chord. Right? So we're going from there, which is all notes that are coming from C. There's the 5th and the 3rd and the root. And then when we get here, we're going to start on the 3rd of D and go down to the root of D and play the 5th and the flat 7. So we're grabbing a lot of chord tones and trying to make them sound like melodies. So the first one, the C. And this is where playing on a standard gets to be a little different from playing on the blues, because you do kind of have to pay more attention to what the underlying chord is. Not always, but it can be really helpful. The third example we have, we're going to play fewer notes, right? So we're going to start off with a big half note here. And then go back to the original rhythmic phrase. So this is a way of taking the rhythmic contour and using it kind of backwards. So instead of feeling like we're playing a phrase and then taking a note out, we're going to play fewer notes in the first place and then put notes back in. Either way, we get a sense of continuity and a sense of contrast, which every 10th grade English teacher was trying to get us to do, right? Compare and contrast. So here's what we got. So that's the third example. And then down here, we could put in more notes, right? So we could have, some 8th notes here at the beginning. So again, just fooling around with notes from C, root, major 7, back to root. There's the 5th, there's the 3rd. It's nothing really magical. It's just looking at what's in the chord and playing around with notes that you're already holding down and seeing what you can do to connect them up. And then when we go to D, we're going to try to play a common tone again. And we'll do the same trick here that we did back at the top, which is keep as many notes as possible and then shorten the phrase by one note. So over the D, these notes become the flat 7, the root, the 5th. We're going to go from G to A. We're going to borrow that note and then end up on the 9th. So that's a really hip sound. We go from this to this. And to the extent that a melody is doing the same job as a chord, just lying on its side, this reflects like being able to think in terms of what the chords are doing on top. That, oh, you can go from here, and we can keep a lot of stuff in common on top, and it sounds really good. Right? Right? So that is really effective. And that's really different sounding from, say, starting off here on line 2. Because here we're thinking about the chord, the voicing, like what's the top note doing, going down. Same philosophy, just really different results. But still kind of working from an awareness of what's going on under the hood as far as what the harmony is doing and what's a good way to move the individual notes of the chord around so that things sound like they're going in a particular direction. So that's going from C to D. And now we're going to go from G to C. And breaking up like this is actually kind of helpful because you can see it as these 4-bar phrases, right? 2 and 2. And you're only thinking about kind of one job at a time, which is how do I get from C to D with some sense of continuity. And now we're going to go, well, how do I get from G back to C? The melody originally goes... And so it's really a G phrase and then a short C phrase. And so we're going to mostly be playing some G stuff and then making a resolution to C. And I've sort of put this dotted line down the middle so you can see where the longer G phrase ends and where the shorter C phrase kind of picks up. So from the model solo, we have... my G phrase, and then there's my C phrase. And then I'm just kind of killing time with the bass on the G until it's time to put in one of our cool single note licks that I've talked about already. So here's another way to do it. Again, keeping the rhythmic phrasing of the melody pretty much intact. This is all kind of G stuff. There's the 7th. There's the 5, there's flat 3 to the 3, back to the root. So again, it's nothing magical. It's notes from the chord kind of strung together with the notes in between, which are scale steps. So, and then there's a blues lick. It's a C blues lick, and blues licks of the home chord feel like they're resolving to the 1 chord, the home chord. So that almost always works. And when you know that, then you can start to find your own variations, because the trickiest part of all this is what to do rhythmically. How do you phrase it? Once you know that, that is the same as blues. Good phrasing is sort of the most important thing, and the notes you drop into it are secondary. They're still important, and they're more important here than maybe they are in blues. Or maybe there's just more to it because the chords have to be spelled out a little more specifically. But thinking about phrasing first and how the phrases are going to resolve means that once you know what the phrasing needs to be based on the melody, and then you look a little bit at your hands and, well, when I'm playing a G chord, I'm holding down these notes. Well, then it's kind of a short leap to go, well, I can make up my own licks because I'm going to just kind of drop these notes from the chord into the phrase. So the third one we have So here's our G stuff. Here's the fifth. Here's the flat third to third again. Here's the root again. And now here's more blues stuff. And it's taking advantage of the open D to get a little bit out of position and grab that flat 3. And then finally, here's the last example. I think this is a little bit busier. Yeah, it's a little more, a little more syncopated. And a little more chromatic, meaning I snuck in a couple of little half-step things there. So we got the flat 3 to the 3 to the root, and then going chromatically from the root to the major 7 to the flat 7. And then going from the 5th to the sharp 5th to the 6th of C, and then over the root. So and so we can put all of that into a model solo. And so I'm still going to just play the original B section, the embellished B section for the melody when I get to the B part, because this is a stepping stone exercise where instead of trying to improvise on the entire tune, last week's exercise was, well, here's model solo. You can improvise an A section or make up an A section, play this variation on the A section 3 times. That's a first step, is to come up with something besides the melody, play a variation on the melody, use that same variation for A and A, play the melody on B, go back to your variation on A. Okay, that's a good step to take. Next step, once you've got a few licks and you've got a couple different ways to play through that rhythmic contour of the melody, can you play 3 different variations on the A section? Still just play the melody when you get back to the B section, because again, this way you get to focus on just what's happening on the A. Well, the A is really just going from C to D7 and then going from G back to C. If you can wrap your head around that, it's like learning an 8-bar blues. And so you're just going to improvise on 8 bars twice in a row, like first A, second A. And then you're going to play the melody for the B section, then you're going to play the A section again, you're going to improvise. So here is a written out version of that. This is model solo number 2, 3 different A sections and the embellished melody for the B section. I'm going to have to stop and do a page turn because I haven't gotten, every time I open the internet, there's an ad for like some little foot gizmo that will turn pages for you. And I'm like, well, I'm not really playing through like the Moonlight Sonata. I don't really need to turn a lot of pages. But today, it would be great to have like something where I could just turn the pages, but I have to pause. So anyway, here's what we got. We got... Oh, I played the wrong fill. No, I didn't. Okay, not perfect, but you get the idea. And you can see those fills kind of tucked in at the end of the A section, right? So here's the first one. Here's the second one. This one is kind of, I wrote this one specifically into the model solo. This is a lick that will take you from C up to F. Right, so that's kind of a little composed bit there that you can check out. So that's what's going on. I can try to play through that a little bit better. Let me just give it another whirl. I'll slow it down too. So, Hey, that's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Okay, so that is the idea. Yeah, and then after that, it would just be permutations of the B section. So let me go full screen here for a second, and I see a few questions. So let me try and pull those up and see what we have going on. Let's see what people are saying about that. Yeah, I did take that a little too fast at the beginning, but that's the way it goes. Let's see. The bluegrass roots. Yeah, I don't know how deep those bluegrass roots are. They're pretty shallow. But, yeah. Let's see. Oh, Mike, when we have variations on the A section, is it still the A section? And question about fingering for measure 5 in model solo 2 from Scott. Okay, can do both of those. Okay, the official nerdy analytical way to do it is to talk about A1, A2, and A3, right? With little like slash marks, sometimes I call it A prime, whatever. You can label these, but the point is that it's still considered AABA, even though the endings are different. And it's still considered, the form is still considered AABA even when you're improvising, because what it refers to at that point is the underlying chord structure. So jazz musicians who are the most sort of, they spend the most time thinking this way, and so their taxonomy is worth paying attention to. They would just think of this as an AABA tune and just be like, oh, well, what you did on the second A was this, or, when you get to the third A, how about we do that? And just they're talking about the form of the tune, which is the form no matter how many times you repeat it. So I hope that addresses that question, but if that's still confusing, let me know. And then Scott wanted to know the fingering for measure 5 in model solo 2. I can talk about that. So let's see what we got here. Yeah, okay. So we're coming from here. My preference is to put the ring finger in the bass, much to the dismay of the long-suffering Ms. Fretboard, who likes to play G chords like that, as do many people. But I like it this way because you can play a full G chord this way, and then the 7th is right there. When I was learning like chords out of, well, it wasn't the Mel Bay book, but it might as well have been, and I saw this chord and this chord, my little pea-sized guitar brain went, well, this is dumb. My pinky's right here. Why don't I play G like that? And then when I go to G7, it's right there. So the only exception is, speaking to bluegrass, if I want one of these, what my dobro playing friend, oh shoot, now I'm blanking on his name, Rosenberg, Ivan Rosenberg, he calls this the modern bluegrass G chord, because he's like, if you go back before like the 1970s, everybody plays this G chord, and then at a certain point everybody starts playing this one with no third, and he's like, yeah, that's great if you want to play Alison Krauss songs, but if you want to sound like Flatt and Scruggs, please no. And so anyway, that's his pet peeve. We've all got them. Mine is this, but so I would hold down measure 5 here. I would hold down ring finger on the G, and then index finger can get the flat 7 on top, pinky can get the 5th, and then let's see, I would just hop over with the pinky to the flat 3rd and play the open string. because I don't want this note ringing out anyway, so even though I could play with some other note, I want to get rid of that note anyway. I don't want to hear the third fret on the second string ringing out any longer than it has to. So I would I'd probably even roll it a little bit. Kind of like that. So Scott, let me know if that answers your question. Okay. And that is everything that we must talk about today. So if there are other questions, here's one. Model solo number 2 measures 1 through 16, measures 6 and 7. Can you play it slowly? Oh yeah, sure. Okay, let me put it in context here. So I'll play from the beginning of the line, and I'll do it as slowly as I can manage to. So this is one of those things where ideally you would get 3 notes for the price of 1. You would pick on beat 4 of measure 6, D in the bass, D in the melody, and slide up. And then as you slide back, you would bring in the left hand ring finger to the 3rd fret of the 5th string. And as you did that, you would slide back. You would be continuing to press your pinky to the fretboard enough that you can still get that sound while you pick with the thumb. This is not necessary. You could pick all of them. You could slide, you could literally go. That would be totally cool. You know, you could slide into the first one. And you could pinch right on the downbeat instead of worrying about this slide. That would sound pretty good too. That would sound great. So from here we'd have. But I left my own devices. I kind of would probably play it like that with the double slide. And I try to be very judicious when I write these out as far as trying to split the difference between providing something that's playable by just about everybody and showing how I would really do it. And so what I have to do sometimes after I've written it out is just try to not think and kind of go back far enough and play through it and then try to catch myself doing it without thinking, because once you start thinking about it, you play it differently. And so I have to play through it a few times until I catch myself doing what feels the most intuitive. And then if I feel like it's doable, I'll write it out that way. And if I don't, then I'll try to simplify it. And most of the time already, by the time we get to the soloing, I feel like, okay, if you can do the fundamental, then I will put slides and syncopations into the embellished. If you can do the embellished, then I assume that you're moving on to I assume the people that are tackling the soloing are people who have already tackled the embellished. I could be wrong, let me know. But I figure if you can do the embellished and you're coming to the improvisation stuff, I'm going to try to give you improvisation stuff that is sort of at the same level as the embellished. Like it's going to be syncopated, it's going to have slides and pull-offs and double stops and that kind of thing. So the soloing stuff is sort of approximately at that kind of intermediate embellished level. That's the idea. So that's how that's played. Let me know if that answered your question. It was a very long-winded answer, as usual. Bill, question. From last week, changing keys from G to C. I want to go from G, change key to sing in C. Even with G being the 5 of C, can you go from the last G and just start in C? Yeah, okay. That's a great question. A little more sophisticated. So let me just see what this other one is. And I'll come back to that from Scott. Thanks to Delphine, I've been using a thumb over on the D7 over F sharp. Is that going to get us in trouble at some point? Nah. It's, because you're not going to forget how to do it without the thumb, right? So, I mean, like, that's another thing where, like, I try to defer to a non-thumb position when possible, because I know it's challenging for some people. And so I tried, if there's a way to do it comfortably, like there is here, then I try to just do it without the thumb. But if you're getting used to it, yeah, knock yourself out. That's not going to really get you in trouble. I advise being able to like do both if you can. Like if you're getting into the thumb wrap, then just, try it both ways, try to keep both of them kind of up to speed. Let's see. Hints for memorizing. Yeah, okay. Well, yes, my hints for memorizing kind of go like this. Do the horizontal 3-step, even if you're a more advanced, intermediate or, high intermediate, whatever it is you are. And make sure you can play the thumb from memory without the tune, because that's basically reminding yourself what the chord progression is. So if you go, it's 2 bars of C, then it's 2 bars of D, then I think it's 2 bars of G, and then we come back to the C with a little quick turn. That's the A section. Okay, cool. And then, can you play the 3 main phrases of the melody on your guitar without looking at the tab? Extra points if you can sing along. Da, 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 da. Oh shoot, full screen, sorry. Da, 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 da. Can you sit and play the melody? Can you sing the melody? Could you play the bass and sing the melody? Da, 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 right? Just all the different parts, right? You're basically, if you ever played in like, band or orchestra and you had to go to sectional rehearsals, or like, today we are only going to work with the French horns. Everybody else go outside and shoot hoops. Whatever it is they had you do, right? You're going to have a sectional for your thumb, right? Make sure the rhythm section knows the chord progression for the A section. Then you're going to have a sectional, for the fingers. They're going to learn, make sure they know the melody. You're going to have a sectional for the singers. Make sure you can sing the melody. It's a pretty singable melody, right? I talked about this last week. These are written by professional songwriters who know what they're doing, right? So the melodies are very melodic, and they're meant to be singable by the masses, right? Because these, you wanted people to walk out of the theater singing them. You wanted, as many people as possible to cover these songs. They didn't think of it as covering. They just, like ideally there would be like, 10 or 12 versions of every song that came out. It would be someone like Caruso, and it would be someone like Bing Crosby, and it would be, some, Hollywood starlet, and it would be, some, tenor crooner. They wanted as many versions of this as possible, so that, it doesn't have a crazy wide range. It doesn't have a crazy chromatic melody, So it's just a good habit to get into of sort of, can you find the melody on the guitar? And then when you go to do the fingerstyle thing, you're putting the pieces back together, right? And exactly where the melody lies over the bass is not nearly as important as keeping the bass steady and playing a melody without stumbling. So the syncopations that I write out are just that. They're syncopations, The song is never written with syncopations in it, at least not from this era. It's written out very straight. the syncopations are put in by the musicians who interpret the song, and that includes us. So the syncopations are there to give you a notion of what a syncopated melody sounds like. But if you don't do the exact same syncopations, it really doesn't matter, to me anyway. Whatever syncopations I put in are the result of, hearing the song over and over played by, lots of different people. So, let me know if that helps about the memorizing. I know it's kind of easier said than done, but those are some steps that may sound kind of, basic, but I think would really help. Let's see. Oh yes, full screen for sure. So let's go to Bill's question. So changing keys. So you want to basically, let's see. Are you going to play the melody in G? Or just solo in G? I guess you could play the melody in C, and then you could improvise in G. Let's see, how would you get to G? Yeah, so that would be pretty straightforward. If you're in C and you want to move the whole thing to the key of G, then you would sit and go, what's 2, 5? 5 of G is D7. 2 of G is A minor. So you could just do C. And you're in G. You could also do, nope, let's see. What's 5 of A? It's E7. Right? And so thinking about the voice leading. And keep a C on top of all three of those chords. C, E7 with a flat 13, A minor, D7 with the 7th on top. Right? So let's say I was going to play the melody in C, and then I was going to go to G, and I was going to improvise, and then I was going to come back. The last A section in C would be, to G. When we get back to C. Okay, so the G is the 5 of C, right? So we got to do something to kind of disguise what we're doing a little bit. So we're in G. Let's see. So G. We could do 2 of C, which is D minor. And then G7, which is 5. There's the simplest way to do it. So, right, so there's your 2, 5. That's D, root, flat 3 and flat 7, G, root, flat 7 and 3rd. And if we wanted to go for the extra point, we could go A7. Let's see. Right, so we'd go G, A7, D minor 7, G. So we'd be going. I really don't have the melody down in this key, but I'm trying to fake it. Yeah, I don't really like the A7 7 so much. I kind of like just the D minor to G, because you're already on a G chord, and it's taking what's basically a G major or G major 6 chord and making it feel like G7 with this kind of D minor, giving you that sort of just suspended sound. I like that the best. So I'd be going, let's see. Yeah, I think just 2-5, just D minor 7 to G7 to C would bring you around in a nice way. Okay. Let's see, Valerie. I'm sitting here picking out the melody and adding the bass, and voila, I've got the rudiments of memorizing. Woo! I'm so bad at memorizing, I think this will really help. Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of 6 of 1 whether you start with the melody or start with the bass. I tend to think from the bottom up, but nothing wrong with starting from the melody and whatever it takes to get it memorized. From Gary, where is the Exactly Like You version like 1.0? Could you rephrase that, just because I'm not sure if you're talking literally about a PDF or more about something else more metaphorical. And then I'll come back to that. Delphine, since there aren't many questions you offered last week to go deeper into turnarounds, maybe some subs, etc., I'd be curious to develop a topic. Okay. Once again, YouTube lesson tomorrow talking about 1625 turnarounds, because this has turned out to be the most inspiring place to come up with YouTube topics. So there'll be one tomorrow, but I can, it's more or less what we talked about last week with the guide tone lines. So I can certainly talk about some more variations right now. Let's see. And Mitch, if you have extra time playing the rest of the model solo, it would be nice to have as a reference. Yes. Okay. Gary, the PDF. Okay, so here is a quick, where is the PDF? Let me do that, and then I will do Delphine's question, and then I think I saw one other question come through. So I will play let's locate the PDF, and then let's do the slow version of page 2 of the model solo, and then I'll do more turnarounds. So let me just get the website on screen, which I didn't have ready to go. My bad. Okay, let's see. Kajabi, here we go. Get the right page here. Is it this one? Winner. I got it on the first try. Okay, dig it. If you're on the home page, you want to go to May of 2026 Improvisation. Click on that. Here are the 3 weeks, right? The 3 live streams. The PDF is usually attached to the first week, and the reason it's not attached to all 3 weeks is that then if I post an update, I have to remember to post it all 3 places, and I'm not usually smart enough to do that. So here is where you download this sort of aqua colored. I don't even know what color this is. It's sort of green and sort of blue. Click on this, and you'll see that there's version 1.0. If I'm in Firefox. When I double click, it actually opens it. There's the PDF, and then I have to do one of these. I have to go up. I guess you can't really necessarily see that, but I have to go up to File and choose to save page as, which sadly you can't see on screen, I guess. But anyway, trust me. So then you do whatever you do to save a PDF. So that's where the PDF is hiding. And now back to whoops. Hey, stop it. Okay, there's the chat. Okay, so playing the rest of the model solo slowly. Yes, here we go. Here is model solo 2, second half. So the first 8 bars are just the embellished B section, right? So let me try that again. there's that. Okay. Oh yeah, turnarounds. So the short version last week was, well, here are the chords for the turnaround. It's 1, 6, 2, which I did as a dominant chord. You could do a D minor, but I did D7 and then G7. And then what's the bass doing? Well, it's doing mostly 5th string, 4th string, except on the G chord when it's doing 6th string, 4th string. And then a couple of options. One is to look at having this little chromatic line moving up on top. So there's the root of the C chord, the third of the D chord, the root of the D chord, and the flat 13 or sharp 5 of the G. And then the various things you can do with that include you can bring in the 3rd string, which gives you 5th and root, flat 7 and 3rd, flat 7 and root, 3rd and flat 13. And then you can syncopate them. So you can do that. You can also look at licks to play on top and make sure there's a chord to support it. So in this case, I'm just thinking, well, what if I could do... So the C chord is sitting right there, so I can get the 5th with my pinky. Now I'm thinking, well, yeah, I can get an A7 chord up here with the flat 7 and the 3rd, and then that lets me play stuff like the root on top or the flat 9. Or the open E, which is the 5th. And then when I'm on the D chord, I already know I have the flat 7 in the root. I can add the 9th on top. And then I can play the root of the G chord. And then a blues lick with the 3rd of the G in the bass. And that's... And so that's still based on this one harmony of this particular harmony of 1, 6, 2, 5. And then within that, there are many sort of variations you can find. And I can combine those two ideas. Right, so there's the guide tone. There's my chord up the neck. There's my guide tone, plus also the 9th on top. And there's the rest of my guide tone. And I could also look at, is there a common tone on top or a descending guide tone line? Right, so here's the 5th of C, the 7th of A7, the 3rd of D7, and the flat 7 of G. So that's another possibility. Then there's the harmony, different kind of way to harmonize it, that's in the vamp, which is just playing C and then C7, or just, I guess, a C major with the 3rd in the bass, and then an F, which is kind of a, you can swap F and D minor because they're relative to each other, relative major minor, and then G for the last 2 beats. So, and we did that for the vamp, but it also works really nicely for the turnaround, because you get this common tone C on top, on the C, C over E, F, and then flat 13, but that's like a bluesy flat third of the C. So I was saying earlier how you have to be more specific around the chords when you're playing a standard, but in this case, this is relying so heavily on 1 and 4 and a little bit of 5 that you can get away with playing blues licks over almost all of that. And so if you're playing the tune, right? And so you got to be careful because the melody is so major 7th oriented on that first bar. So if you're going to play blues stuff right before it, you got to make sure you're out. So but that's another way you can do it. And then, I mean, you can just start to look at as many different ways to think about the 1-6-2-5 as possible. You know, you can go from C to A. So you can put the flat 13 on top. And then D9. So now you're trying to kind of come down. Or you could even start on the 9th of C. I mean, having this general idea of like means you can kind of dance all around it. But if you wanted some slightly different, I'm trying to think if there's other, I mean, you could, well, I mean, someone mentioned this earlier and I sort of blew right past it. But yeah, you could go from 1 to sharp 1, or I guess flat 2. I don't know what you would call it. This is a C sharp. I guess it's a sharp 1. It's a C sharp diminished chord to a D minor to some kind of G. So that A7 flat 9 sound is kind of the same as that C sharp diminished. So there's that one way of doing it. So right, and that of course could be played elsewhere because of the way it's, you know, these chords transpose by flat third. So there's other ways you can do that as well. I don't my own ears don't gravitate towards that sound quite as much. It sounds very period to me, like very much from that 1930s world, which is appropriate for this tune, but I feel like it's one of those sounds that when, at least when I was growing up and we learned that sound, we thought it sounded silly. And it's the kind of sound that musicians will use to sort of satirize that time period, because it sounds, when done in a hokey way, it sounds profoundly hokey. You know, it sounds like, it kind of conjures up this like frenetic jazz age kind of vibe, which, you know, for better or worse, it kind of should in a way. But because that's, you know, there are a lot of songs in that period that do that. So, I mean, I sort of prefer the dominant chords sound a little bit weightier to me, like have a little more gravitas, and they don't sound quite like sort of dizzy, flapper-aged harmonies to me. But, you know, they're good to know, and they're really foundational. And in certain songs, they sound great. Baked in, right? Although this one is really a 6 chord. That's really F to D7, but D7 with the flat 9, and then G minor, and then this is really an F diminished chord resolving upwards. It's common tone diminished resolution, which, don't feel bad if they're confusing. It took me like 30 years to really understand. Oh yeah, that's that kind of diminished chord as opposed to this kind of diminished chord, which is really working as a 5 form. I mean, it's complicated. Not that complicated, but it was complicated to me. So, anyway, so there's a few 1-6-2-5s. Nothing really earth-shattering that we didn't talk about last week, but it's a couple more possibilities in there, so I hope that helps. All right, next week we will look at improvising on the B section. So F to F minor to C, and then we've actually got a turnaround at the end of the B section to take us back to the 1 chord. So that'll be fun. So if you want, you can check out those B section permutations, and we'll look at putting all of that together next week. Okay, that's everything. So good questions this week. And I will see you all on the